Sair da escola já com uma formação profissional no currículo? Parece bom demais pra ser verdade, né? Pois é. No ensino técnico do Senac, isso é possível. É ensino médio junto com formação técnica, que acontece durante os 3 anos. Lá, eles usam metodologia para projetos, desenvolvendo competências como resolução de problemas, pensamento crítico e colaboração, além de valores éticos e sustentáveis. Quer saber? Senac. Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino médio e saiba mais.
Hi there, I am Sarah Jane Case, and I'm the host of your new favorite show, Enneagram and Coffee. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the beautiful and hard parts of being human. We discuss the Enneagram, a personality map that is taking over the world, for increased self-compassion, personal growth, and healthier relationships. Listen to Enneagram and Coffee on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sarah J. Maas's second installment in the Crescent City series. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This is part 2 of this week's episode, where we're discussing chapter 72 through the epilogue in our final episode covering House of Sky and Breath.
Make sure to stick around at the end of the episode for a very special announcement. The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author.
This podcast is a discussion, shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
The interpretations presented in this podcast are just a few of many possibilities. Listeners are encouraged to read along and share their own analysis of the text.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series and extended universe spoilers may be discussed with or without warning.
Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
If you are enjoying the podcast, check out our Patreon for more exclusive content. You can find us at patreon.com/Book Talk for Book Talk. We start chapter 76, Seeing Shahar's Wings. From Hunt's point of view, mind you. Quote, Shahar's pristine white wings were displayed above Hunt's, still glowing after all these centuries. It is this terrifying, but also poetically beautiful full circle moment in my mind. We have dealt so much with Hunt's PTSD in Earth and Blood, but a lot in Sky and Breath. On top of all of his warnings to Bryce, all of his verbal processing with Bryce, and struggling with the memories of the rebellion. All for it to come to naught because he has wound up back here. The exact place he wanted to avoid. And it's so tragic.
Yeah.
But again, poetically so beautiful. And it's a chef's kiss for me.
It is a really great chef's kiss. SGM does PTSD and trauma really well. And I think this kind of is why people probably got extra mad at Bryce, because it's like she really like was the one and come and be like, all right, this is what we're doing. And it just ends up with Hunt absolutely spiraling because he's staring at his wings and he looks at them and he just thinks, quote, it was proof of his failure, proof that he should never have come here, that they should have told Ophian and Tharion and Cormac to fuck off. It's so different than what Bryce was thinking the chapter before. Again, little reminder of what Bryce's mentality was. Quote, the cycle had to stop somewhere. Other worlds had managed to overthrow them. And yet here we are with Hunt, who is like, you know what? Definitely should have ran and hid. I will say, though, at this point in the book, Bryce does know more than Hunt, right? But this is also the clear line of where his thoughts go in the next book and where her thoughts go in the next book. Because he doesn't know that. He knows the truth a little bit, but he doesn't know the full everything that she sees until book 2, once he's out. And she's just sitting here on these thoughts. But I'm going to jump. Oh, go ahead.
You said book 2, but...
Yeah. Oh, book 3. Yeah.
But like more than halfway book 3.
Yeah, it takes a long time for him to figure out. Because at that point, he's just been sitting on his own thoughts of like, this was a mistake. This was horrible. I should have run. This was horrible. This is horrible. Versus Bryce was stewing on the thought of, we got to bring them down. No one knows. They're eating everyone's energy. Like all of that. So I am going to jump a little bit ahead on these quotes. Hunt thinks, quote, he should have seen it, should have pushed Bryce away from this mess, should have taken her from the first hint of trouble and gone to a place where no one could ever find them. But this was Midgard. No matter where they went, no matter how far from Lunathian or the Eternal City, the Asteri would always find them. And so, like, on some level, Hunt gets it. On some level, he realizes this would never work. However, that's not what he's going to be hyper fixated on during his torture.
And ultimately, I think it comes down to instinct. Hunt's instinct is to hide. Bryce's instinct is to save.
Yeah.
Hunt is capable of the thought trains to get to Bryce's level, but it takes a lot because it's against his nature.
Yeah.
Baxian walks in with Pollux into the throne room. And at this point, no one knows that Baxian has turned. However, Hunt thinks, quote, had everything he'd, as in Baxian, told them been a trap. A long con to get them here. Oh, Hunt, no. I mean, you ignored him for so long.
I know.
I think he was telling you the truth.
I know.
Always trusting and mistrusting the wrong people. But the ones that are used to long cons, the Asteri. And that's when we learned that Rigelus knew Cormac had been working with the rebels for a long time and decided, quote, why kill one traitor when we could eventually kill many?
It's actually good logic.
It's great logic. And you know what? Rigelus won. Here are the many. Here are the many to be killed.
Oh.
And then he tells everyone Cormac is dead.
I know. Yeah, it's so sad. that's. I know we keep saying that, but like Cormac. This is one giant goodbye. And again, it hurts extra because no one actually says goodbye. Quote, Ruhn looked at his sister and said softly, you brought so much joy into my life, Bryce. Now, I do want to say when I was reading this section, I was at your place, Amy, reading next to you. And all I could think was, don't cry. She's going to make fun of you if you cry.
But it is so sad because it's
You
right
didn't say
after.
no.
I didn't say no.
Go ahead. Continue. Just want to point that out.
Ruhn says to Bryce, you brought so much joy into my life right after Rigelus tells everyone, oh yeah, the Autumn King tortured Ruhn all his life. And Bryce, for her, that's confirmation. She's hearing this for the first time as she looks at Ruhn, and Ruhn's like, you brought so much joy into my life.
Like all of his tattoos were because of his dad, and we know that he's covered in tattoos. And like, we can only guess what it was. Like, we know that they're probably abuse, but also probably experiments, and we know there's just a lot that goes into it, and also to have your trauma aired out like that, like by the Asteri,
brutal.
You know, it's like the Asteri being like, hey, remember that one time in the 6th grade where you peed your pants? It's like, no, but now we all do. And no one will know if that was true, what I just said.
I wasn't going to ask.
It was. I was right outside my house. I was so close and I didn't make it.
I'm sorry, but it's okay. As you know,
we don't have to because I'm posting all of this. So you choose what you want to share.
Okay, moving on. Rigelus reveals that Celestina is not the angel that Hunt thinks she is. Hunt tries to lie his way out of being restrained and says, Celestina can vouch for us. And Rigelus laughs, quote, Celestina? You mean the archangel who reported to me that you'd lied about going to visit Miss Quinlan's family a few weeks ago, and then reported to me immediately when she saw you leave the barracks heavily armed? Rigelus removes Celestina's name. When Hunt says Celestina can vouch for them, Rigelus's immediate thing is to make it clear Celestina is not an individual with will. She is an archangel that we bred, as Asteri, we bred to carry out our will. This archangel, my minion, told me everything.
He stripped her of her name.
He stripped her of her name and her identity.
Yeah.
And it's such a clever narrative thing for SJM to have done. And also it makes us feel the pain that, like, yeah, Celestina played you for a fool the entire time.
I mean, she does it for hypaxia.
Yeah. Well, and I think Hunt on some level understands that.
Yeah, yeah.
He thinks, quote, proving her trustworthiness to the Asteri by selling Hunt and his friends out so that they might react kindly if they learned about Hypaxia. Hunt would do the same if it was Bryce, quite frankly.
I honestly, I think he would have sold them out better. I think he would have been like,
sooner.
Hey, here, I put a tracking device on them. I did everything. What do you want? I have
photographic evidence.
Right? I can round them up right now. Anything to protect Bryce.
Before we move on, there's another breadcrumb that comes up that refers to Bryce landing in Prythian, or that is important for when Bryce lands in Prythian. Rigelus says about Bryce's starlight, quote, it's a beacon to the world from which the Fae originally came. It sometimes glows when nearest the Fae who have undiluted bloodlines from that world. Prince Cormac, for example. Cormac is from Avalon, and if he has undiluted bloodline from the homeworld, then Avalon is closest to the Fae homeworld. Just little breadcrumbs to remember for when we get to Prythian.
Did we confirm if Ruhn is related to someone from Prythian?
His mother is from Avalon.
Right, his mother is from Avalon. So Ruhn is, because he looks like Rhys, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to, which I'm sure other people have come to this conclusion. But, like, it's kind of cool that Aelin and Farah's descendants got together.
Between Ruhn and Lidia.
Yeah. Okay, maybe not Farah's descendants, but whatever. We're going to pretend like it works.
I mean, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Whatevs. We get another little clue here when Rigelus says about her star, saying that it glows for those who you choose as your loyal companions, knights. I know we get that a lot in Throne of Glass, and I think people think a little bit about that when it comes to more in Azriel, but we don't really get too much about this whole knight stuff coming back. I don't know. I can't remember book 3 as much.
No.
It's just more cluing. It's more clues for Throne of Glass.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially since, like, this one ends with her going to Prythian, so we know there's that link. I think SJM needed as many Throne of Glass clues as she could possibly throw in there.
I think so.
As they say goodbye, as Hunt and Bryce say their goodbye, Hunt says, and I'm not going to cry, I'm a strong person. I'm not looking at Amy. It says, quote, our love is stronger than time, greater than any distance. Our love spans across stars and worlds. I will find you again, I promise. There is nothing more romantic in a book. Like, let's talk about that trope. You know what? Screw enemies to lovers. Fuck that. Fuck who did this to you. I'll find you again. That is my trope. That is the one I eat up.
I agree. This feels very Cassian and Nesta in Wings and Ruin.
Oh, that's the one. That's the good stuff.
Yeah. That, like, I will find you in the next life. Like,
great, cool. So I'm going to just, like, be shattered completely with this.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. What we don't know at this point, and we don't know this because this is done in third person, and it's, so it's a little bit more vague, is that Bryce has undone all of their chains. Hers, Hunt's, and Ruhn's. But we can also sense that something is coming. And, they can't flat out say goodbye because then everyone would know what's going on. But we, the reader, know this isn't normal. Like, I feel tense. I feel very uncomfy. Something bad's about to happen.
When Bryce goes to say goodbye to Ruhn, Ruhn tells Bryce about his reading from the Oracle when he was a child, the one that he's been lying about all his life, and tells Bryce it's because, quote, you have to be queen. Obviously, it's a breadcrumb because she will be. And Ruhn reiterates it with the signal, long live the queen.
More chills.
Yeah, I know. Damn it. SJM. Because we were so mad at her last week.
I know. This feels like a very unhealthy relationship right now.
It really does.
Like,
but it gives you chills. It makes you want to cry. I genuinely feel like death is about to take place. Like, the stakes are really, really high at this point.
And for the first time, I think, I was about to say out of all of her books, that's not true. But for the first time in the Crescent City world, the stakes are high and they fall to where they land. Like they're, because so many times the stakes are high, but nothing happens. Like, it doesn't pan out. The stakes are high and it actually happens.
Completely agree.
We also have this moment because like shit starts hitting the fan and quote, the hind was on the floor, unconscious. Had Baxian's treachery been a surprise to her? I was looking, does that mean Baxian was the one who knocked her out?
Yeah, I'm thinking Baxian knocked her out and then went for Pollux.
Yeah, I was confused. I was a little confused about that, but I'm happy that she's passed out so that she doesn't, give away her.
Yeah,
it's such a
convenient.
it's such a simple, convenient thing. However, I do appreciate it.
I do too.
Bryce then is running away from Rigelus, and I think this is one of the best scenes. I think that it is so well written, and it's not long. Again, like you're reading through this, and I would expect a much longer action scene, but it's very relatively short, but it's so tense, it's so dramatic, and it's believable. Quote, he blazed white with magic, fury radiating from him. And then another quote, Bryce leapt back right behind Rigelus. And that is just like how Bryce jumped back with her friends when they were at the training center. So a little clue that we had early on of her using her powers. Another quote, glass and countless statues to the Asteri's egos shattering. It's so visual. It's so rich. You can, I'm dodging things as I'm reading it type of energy. And then finally, Bryce is yanked across, quote, screaming to Hunt and Ruhn, left behind in that crystal palace screaming.
And let's talk about the fact that it's not a period at the end. It's a
dash.
M dash. Yeah. Because it's still going.
Because then it's like screaming what, right? And then it's almost like, is Bryce screaming or are Hunt and Ruhn screaming, right? Because it's a dash, you don't know anything more than that, just screaming. Which, again, stylistic choices that is just really great. I appreciate it a lot. We're now in chapter 77, and Hunt tries to think about like what really matters, right? He's sitting there and he thinks, quote, Bryce's scent still lingered in the air of the empty space framed by the gate. Hunt focused on that scent alone as Pollux shoved him to the floor before the gate. I love the contradiction where for Hunt, Bryce's scent is peace, while for Ruhn, Lidia's scent was pain.
It's a great point.
Maybe you should have leaned into it, Ruhn. I don't know. Quote, Hunt doubted he'd be able to see it. Doubted Ruhn or Baxian would either. So at this point, Hunt is accepting his fate. Pollux has his hand, is holding his head steady. And then Rigelus is coming in and is about to give him the black halo, making him a slave again, which is like, Hunt was about to be imprisoned and a slave anyway. The halo is just like, a nice little, it wasn't needed.
Yeah.
But it was there to hurt him the most. And it's symbolic more than anything. And that's really impressive.
Right. Especially when he expects to die. Yeah. He thinks he's about to be executed.
And he's not. He's about to keep going.
He'd rather die free than live enslaved.
Yeah. Hunt thinks, quote, no, anything but this. And it's very similar to Tharion and his Finns, right? Like they'd rather die free than die empowered. But we're going to continue with this, quote, his power writhed in its iron grip, no longer his to fully command, just as his own life, his freedom, his future with Bryce gone. This is the ultimate torture. This is the thing that would, of course, absolutely push Hunt over the edge, which is why this chapter ends with, quote, then Hunt knew nothing at all. And this line messed with a lot of people for a very long time, SJM, me included, where we thought, me thought, that he lost his memory.
Yeah. Where what SJM likely just meant is like a fade to black, right? He knocked out, he fainted, whatever.
Someone pointed out one time, whenever before the third book came out, they're like, she uses that description in other books to depict passing out. So fine, you can have that one, SJM.
Chapter 77 was so good because as a reader, you've spent 800 pages knowing that this is exactly what Hunt doesn't want.
Yeah.
And Bryce's choices brought him here. And that's just tragic.
It is. And I don't want to put the onus on her, but at the end of the day, she was the driving force. She was the one who at the very beginning said, yep, we're doing it with Ophion, or we're signing up with Ophion, we're helping. However, we need to know more about Danica. We need to help Emil. We have to know what was in that room. She was the one who made that choice every step of the way. And her actions did have consequences, and these are them.
We then get to chapter 78. And on its own, chapter 78 is chef's kiss. And it's not just for the obvious reasons. It's obvious to me, SJM spent a lot of time getting this right. We first start with subverting reader expectations. The first line is, quote, "Hell had grass and mist."
Such a great line. Such a great line.
It's a great line because the Asteri's notes said hell is like this dark, cold place. So we're like, wait, what?
I'm like, this could be cold. I don't know.
Sure, that's true. Bryce is so sure she's in hell. And we're so sure she's in hell because that was her intent, that we don't doubt this, but we're like, wait, hell has grass. We then get a clue within the next paragraph. Quote, "Her fingers dug into the verdant grass." What else is verdant per Rigelus, the Fae homeworld? Bryce then visually connects this place, a city ancient and beautiful, like something on a Pangeran postcard.
That contradiction, just Pangeran postcard also.
I love it for a lot of reasons, but what I think is important here is that Bryce is visually tying Pangera, which a few chapters ago she called ancient. We talked about it in the last episode, and now it's tying it to this place. I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
Maybe because they had the same architects.
Yeah. Oh, and that's why, real quick, the reason why I said it was the juxtaposition between Pangeran and postcards, because one's super old and one's like, postcards like very modern.
Yeah.
Type.
True.
Just in case someone was listening and was like, what? Okay, continue.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Bryce then claims to see a demon with black boots, scale-like armor, and, quote, "wings, great black wings, a demon's wings." Now, Bryce knows what demons look like. She fought them in Earth and Blood. So she can't be wrong about the similarities. She's seen both up close. However, it's also SJM attempting to lead us in the wrong direction because Bryce is acting on limited information. It's great. We also can, even though readers might already be suspecting that this is not in fact hell, we also have to keep in mind when Hunt saw Apollyon in his dreams, quote, "Wings rustled nearby, not the soft feathers of his wings, but something leathery dry." We have proof that there are wings like the ones on this demon's back that are from hell. But very quickly, we switch over to Prythian references. If you haven't figured out yet that they're in Valaris, the demon has scarred hands. Who do we know who has scarred hands and wears scale-like armor and has wings?
Daddy Azzy.
Azrael. And then when
Two different names.
Daddy Azzy. When Azrael takes Bryce to a house, the first thing she smells is roses and bread.
I didn't even.
What does that make you think of?
I didn't think of it. Elaine. I didn't clock it till I read your notes, and I was like, holy shit. That's awesome.
Because they are currently in the townhouse.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
I think they landed at the river house, but then they go to the townhouse.
Do they go to the townhouse?
Yes, because it describes the living room with the dark mantle over the fireplace of black marble, and then across the hallway there's a dining room.
Which makes sense, because no one's living at the townhouse at that point.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Amy, what's that?
An ad break.
We'll be right back. And then, even little details, we're starting to get, now, at this point, when I was reading it, I knew so quickly it was Azrael. I was like, oh. And especially, moments like this, where it's quote, "He caught her inside." She could have sworn he sounded exasperated. It's very Azrael. It's just, the reason why I'm pointing this out is because of how, this chapter is, again, very short. SJM only has so many words, and we are getting a lot of personality from characters that we love, that we're used to. And she is giving us a lot with a really short amount of description.
Yep. When Bryce has the blindfold removed, she sees that the clothing that all the Fae around her are wearing is what is worn in Avalon. Rigelus just told Bryce, not a handful of pages ago, purest bloodlines from the Fae homeworld are in Avalon. And all these Fae are dressed like Avalon. So at this point, she should realize she is in the Fae homeworld.
Yep. She's emotional. She's upset. I get it.
She's emotional. She's upset. She doesn't deduce it. But what she does deduce is, hey, maybe I should try the ancient language of the Fae because they speak that in Avalon. And SJM did the brilliant thing of planting it in book 1 so that when she gets to the end of book 2, it's believable.
Yep. We then get visual of Rhys. Quote, his eyes were the same shade of violet blue as Ruhn's. His short hair, the same gleaming black. This male's skin was browner, but the face, the posture, it was her brother's. You know, at this point, we're all freaking out. We're all saying, holy shit, I think I know who this is. And the fact that, you know, she's made the connection that Amryn and Fury look the same, something that we'll never, ever revisit and resent forever. At least we get some kind of explanation as to why Ruhn would look like Rhys, vaguely. And then between that quote and then the next one, I feel like it becomes understandable why people think SJ might have made a turn. So here's the next, the quote that I'm thinking of. Quote, it was all there was left to do. Throw herself at their mercy and pray they were decent people. That even if she come from another world, they'd recognize her as Fae and be compassionate. I feel like, in my opinion, this is a perfect chapter. Yes. Like, I think this, like, to your point, this is one of her most tight, well-written, well-thought-out chapters. And that sentence is a little bit disproportionate to what I feel like we get in the beginning of CC3. That's another day. That's another season. But I'm just calling out sections that I think we set up an emotion with Bryce of hopeful, of being willing to work with them and willing to, like, trust them. And that's not the same emotion we're going to start with.
Yeah, I think the one thing, because I had this underlined in my book as well, the one thing I will say counter to that is that we had expectations because of this line. Yeah. That they would be able to connect, that they would understand, that they would train together. But the first thing they do that no one thought about was Rhys putting Bryce in prison.
Yes. Yeah.
That is the only way in my mind
you'll justify it. And I thought of that too. I was debating that too. It was just, I was really hoping that, you know, this idea, this attitude of like, I'm going to put faith in them and hope for the best was going to do.
And Bryce,
and she closes up real fast on them for many reasons, you know, because I think SJM did a lot to go into of her not trusting Faye, right? Like SJM spent a lot of time making Bryce be really wary of Faye, and so her hesitation also makes sense. I'm curious to know when this was written versus when the rest was written, because this, it feels slightly disconnected. However, again, that's another season, another discussion. But let's end this chapter with the most famous lines that I'm going to say in the grouped in literary history, equal to Luke, I am your father. And the world collectively lost their shit. Quote, he smiled slightly and said in the old language, in a voice like glorious night, hello, Bryce Quinlan. My name is Rhysand. I got chills now.
I did too. So I had never planned on reading Crescent City. But after Sky and Breath came out, I saw a TikTok that was by a woman who said, I didn't plan on reading Crescent City. And then my sister told me the last 4 words of the book, and that's all you need to know to start reading.
And you did it.
And she was not wrong.
Yeah, it really is. It was one of the best surprises. Like, I haven't had a reaction like that in so long to a book. Like, the last time I felt that guttural was like in Harry Potter in one of the reveals, right? You know, like it was one of those like, what moments? And it was, I just have so much respect for the thought and planning she did for this.
I agree.
Regardless of the little things we might have issues with.
Yeah, I think that, I know we have the epilogue.
Yeah.
Still to go to.
I don't even want to talk about it, but continue. That's
Before we get to the epilogue, SJM works so hard in both Earth and Blood and Sky and Breath to flip the script on the readers. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it did not. But this, by far, like, she'll never be able to repeat this again. This, and she did it in a way that was so perfect that Bryce, I called you Bryce because you have red hair right now. Jac and I have talked about the fact that all is forgiven because of this chapter.
And that is the truth.
Because it doesn't, I mean, even now, I remember how mad we were before
3 episodes, Amy.
We recorded.
For 3 episodes prior to this. We were mad. We were frustrated. The last 2 in particular, scathing reviews.
And yet somehow we can go, slow clap, chef's kiss. You did it.
Yeah. Because ultimately...
All right,
Okay.
Do we want to save that for the...
Well, I just want to save my one thought because I'm not going to remember it.
Do you want to say it? And then I just want to make sure we have something to say for the end question.
I want to say okay, never mind. Hold on. Let me just write my thought down.
Yeah, write your thought down.
Okay, thank you.
Are you going to save it for
what's the question? Yeah.
Yeah, great.
All right, now to go into the section that I feel like ruins the whole thing. I don't want to talk about it, but continue.
We have to talk about the epilogue because it's in the book.
Yeah.
I really wish either the epilogue in chapter 78 had been swapped, or you know what? Just cut the epilogue. Not worth it. And the reason for that is it makes Sigrid seem so important.
Yes. Yes.
And her storyline so important, which on one hand, I understand that it subverts expectations once we get to Flame and Shadow, but I also find A, it's very annoying, and B, it makes me feel like SJM changed the story of Sigrid when she rewrote Flame and Shadow.
Because it's not about subverting expectations at that point. It's about it's a clear change in thought. Because you don't end a book like this with an epilogue that doesn't have a greater importance than, oh, they die. Like halfway through the book, in the next book. So I'm going to read a couple quotes here. Quote, he fucked up guard duty with Hypaxia. He wouldn't make that mistake again. This is Ethan, like, of course, like, so you've abandoned her, right? Like, you're going to abandon Hypaxia and you're going to go fix it with what's her face, Sigrid. And then we have this other moment, quote, we need you, Flynn said. His voice was full of an authority that people outside the Ox rarely heard. We're friends now, Wolf. Get your furry ass over here. We don't see that side of Flynn, like normally he's like this jokester, and at the same time, like he's giving you the the red flag, hey, things are happening, you need to get over here. But Ethan does not register that at all. I mean, he's busy on his own mission to help a wolf. Quote, a blow from his fist dented the metal doors. The second one broke the locks. The third sent them crumbling inward. He's there for the wolf. He's there for Sigrid. He's there for that person and not anyone else.
Yeah, and I just felt like with this quote, his strength is absurdly strong because you'd think the astronomer would have doors that would keep out Vanir. And I felt like this might have been an indication of his primeness.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I can see that. I mean, there's something about Sigrid that's making him, really step up his own prime. And, so going back to how Ethan is struggling with being there, he thinks, quote, my friends need me. My pack needs me. That's what they've become. He wouldn't lose it, would fight until the bitter end to protect it. Sure you would. But in all fairness, though, he does go at it like he has the right thoughts, just the worst execution, because he does go in and is like, you know what? They are my pack. Let me go after Tharion and not Ruhn, who you literally turned into, your other brother. Okay, but Ethan,
he's dumb.
So dumb.
He's just dumb.
So dumb.
Let's get into Go ahead.
Let's hold hands and do it. Let's get into some
breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
In chapter 73, Rigelus tells Bryce, quote, you are starborn and have the horn bound to your body and power. Your ancestors wielded the horn in another fey object that allowed them to enter this world. Stolen, of course, from their original masters, our people. Our people who built fearsome warriors in that world to be their army. All of them prototypes for the angels in this one. Which, I'm like, Prythian, Illyrians, and Seraphim, and other winged fae were made by the Daglin / Asteri to be warriors? Did we know this?
Mm-hmm.
I forgot this.
Yeah. No, I mean, to call the Bat Boys prototypes is an insult. Chapter 74. Murdoch says to Hunt, quote, "Maybe it's because your scent is wrong, Angel. Not like any other angel I've scented. It's because he's been bred and he's been made. He's more than just an angel. Mm-hmm. He's hell made."
Mm-hmm. In chapter 76, Rigelus says to Bryce, "This all seems very familiar, doesn't it? A starborn queen who allied with a prince of hell who trusted him deeply and ultimately paid the price." A starborn queen, you say, Rigelus? Even he's foreshadowing Bryce's queenliness.
Troye Sivan, what are you doing? Also in chapter 76, Bryce, after learning from Rigelus how Ruhn was tortured as a kid by the Autumn King, quote, "She'd guess what the Autumn King had done to Ruhn, how he tortured him as a boy, though she never confirmed it, and that debt, she'd make sure her sire repaid it someday." And he does, very much so, with his life.
In chapter 78, the townhouse Bryce is taken to once she lands in hell has a, quote, "style that could have fit in with her father's study, with Jessica's gallery." If Prythian, which the Fae left 15,000 years ago, or actually 30,000 years ago, matches the Autumn King's study and Jessica's gallery, Jessica's old.
Where'd you get 30,000 years from?
So, oh no, I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I'm wrong. Sorry, 15,000 years ago. I was right. So
we're not
if they're in
any women here,
but Jessica's old.
She's not 30,000 years old.
No, she's half that. Yeah. So, Jac, our final question of the season. Mm-hmm. To what extent are we satisfied with the transition from Earth and Blood to Sky and Breath and again into Flame and Shadow at this point in the Crescent City series?
You know, this woman, this SJM, she freaking does it. I don't know why I question. I know why I question, because like you were saying earlier, for 3 episodes, we questioned where this was going. Okay, but before I get into this rant, let me start from the beginning. So from Earth to Blood to Sky and Breath, I think that leap was done perfectly, right? I think that we understood where they were, what their trauma was, where their priorities were, their motivation. That made sense. If you think about the characters that we see in Flame and Shadow, yeah, then who we see at the end of this book makes sense, right? We are seeing Hunt, who is terrified. Every single PTSD nightmare has come true. We see Bryce with this whole realization of, I need to bring these Asteri down. You now have like these 2 warring opinions and motivators going against each other, and that's going to be a huge part. I think the biggest thing that's been the struggle was Sky and Breath from the beginning to the end. And we touched on it the whole season. We're going to continue to touch on it because this is the season finale. But it makes sense. It doesn't matter if we don't like it, some of the things about it, you know? Because ultimately, one of the things what I wrote down earlier was like, ultimately the things that you and I struggled with, the things that we weren't okay with, was the fact that we didn't get to see as much of Bryce's growth as we would have liked. We would have hoped to have gotten more. The part that we struggled the most with is the growth and the decisions that Bryce made off screen. I don't think we necessarily doubted that those were the choices that she would have made. We just were saying that the biggest issue in this book is that we have to really infer that. Mm-hmm. But fucking hell, this book just hits at the end.
It really does. It really, really does. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I do think that maybe the first 300, 400 pages of Sky and Breath are good. Mm-hmm. It's the second half when the author goes crap, I have a lot to accomplish to get to point C.
Yeah.
That's where it starts to crumble.
Mm-hmm.
And the pacing of the development didn't feel right to us as readers. I think it's also true that SJM in some ways wrote herself into a hole. She had to, I would have cut Tharion and Ethan.
Yeah.
But you can't have the end with Cormac without Tharion's point of view. And so you have to have Tharion throughout. And you can't have Ethan successfully become Prime in Flame and Shadow without having some sort of storyline for him as well.
Yeah.
And I wish she could have accomplished Flame and Shadow without that. Because Ethan contributes nothing to this book.
Or the next.
I mean, it's because of him working with Hypaxia. They get the God Rifle. They get,
But
they
him
get
working
the
with
Parasite.
the person who does it. Like,
Right.
rather than developing another woman, because we don't have developed women in this series, not until Lidia, rather than spending time on developing a very strong female character, a woman of color, rather than doing that, we spent time on some idiot
Two white men.
Two white men. It's some stupid white men. And, each thing that you're listing off of things that we could have focused on, of like saying, well, we needed Tharion for Cormac's point of view. No, we didn't. We could have had it Cormac's point of view. We could have had his death be his own POV and ended it there, a lot of the issues that we have is, I feel like, resolvable, but, there, in our opinion, I mean, not even our opinion, there clearly is a path for Tharion and Ethan's future books and their stories, because both of their stories are very much not done. So, setup could have been done like you do with Flynn. We, you and I were talking about like Ariadne and, saying like that, oh, wow, look, there's a character that like, there's a romance and that's happening off to the side and we don't have to like actually focus on it to still have their character growth. And I will be, not bitter, but like, I think that not giving Hypaxia, a queer woman of color, as much of a stage as Ruhn or as Ethan or as Tharion was one of the biggest misses, because her coming in and doing what she does in book 3 is incredible. I love Hypaxia. I feel like it could have hit a lot more if we had worked on her development rather than Ethan and Tharion's.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's where I think the crux of our issues with Sky and Breath come from. Not enough time with Bryce, not enough time with another woman.
Yeah.
And get rid of these useless men. Like,
truly.
Go away. All of their story could have been told from someone else's point of view.
Completely.
But here we are.
So the book sacrifices for her future projects. And that is what the hardest thing is because like at the very end of this book with these last chapters, I mean, glowing reviews from you and I, like this is some of her most tightly well-written, stylistic, very thought out chapters that gives us chills, that makes us like feel very emotional and feel the high stakes that is so hard for an author to make you feel. So like we get that, and it's frustrating when it's like, you have an author who is that talented, and she made a gamble, and for us personally, that gamble doesn't pay off. Yeah. Now, maybe whenever we get their books, we'll be like, oh, this was the most brilliant, thought out, wonderful thing. But as this one individual book without the context and the larger, world of the Maasverse or within the series, this one book is probably one of the more, I don't want to call it flawed, but struggling books out of the ones we've done an analysis on with her writing. Yeah. I mean, I think flawed is the right word, but if we want to be more mild, troubled, disgusting, fucked up. No, yeah, I see your point. It's her weakest book. It is her weakest book. And to your point, if we get another Crescent City book that builds off Tharion and Ethan, and we're like, oh my God, it couldn't have happened without Sky and Breath. Okay, fine. But I get to be mad until that point. But she still sacrificed a novel. Yeah, she did. And she did. Like, you don't
And
get
she
that.
sacrificed Bryce.
Yes. And that is very frustrating, to sacrifice our main heroine for other characters that really don't need it. So yeah, like, in the grand scheme of things, this book is amazing. We get so much lore. We get so many clues. We get so many things. Yeah. Like, if you look at this book in the larger Maas verse, I can eat this up.
Yeah.
As a novel within itself, not her strongest, but damn it, those last chapters hit.
Yeah. They really, really do.
Holy shit. Was that it?
We did it.
Did we do a season? Did we?
We did a season.
Wow. Oh my God. Okay.
I need a drink before we do this outro.
Yeah. No. Well, before we do the outros, we promised them that we would announce something. Did you forget it?
I wrote it in the sign-off.
Oh, did you? No, but I think we do. We give it more of a umph.
Okay.
Do you think we're going to just let it go with like a casual thing? This deserves... Yes, no. Obviously. What? No. Okay, the reason why this deserves a conversation is, one, people thought we'd be going into, after Winter Book Club, going into Flame and Shadow. That's not happening, guys. Not this next season.
Yeah, we're not doing... Yeah, well, and then at some point, we told some of our listeners, we're going to do Silver Flames.
Yeah. And guess what? We're not going to do Silver Flames after Winter Book Club. Instead, we're going to do a book that we have told you for a very long time that there was no way we were doing this book for a very long time. Amy, please announce.
Starting January 2025, we will be covering Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass.
I'm going to give a minute for everyone to like... Yeah. We're excited. We made this decision today, hours before recording this.
Let's be real. Jac made this decision 20 hours ago, and I found out midday today.
None of these are lies.
But I'm okay
None of these are lies.
I accept.
It's the thing is, though, there's a number of reasons why we're doing this. We will get to Flame and Shadow. We will get to Silver Flames. However, we kind of need to take a step back and go to where it all started. And that is with Throne of Glass. So with that, let us sign off, and you guys can hear a little bit more details on what to expect.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we will be discussing listener thoughts on House of Sky and Breath.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or on a Patreon exclusive episode.
We look forward to sharing our thoughts next season when we explore the first novel in Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass series. Our deep dive into the Throne of Glass novel is scheduled to release late January 2025. Until then, we're excited for you to join us for our Winter 2024 book club. New episodes air every Tuesday and Thursday beginning November 19th. Check out our Instagram for more information and the books we plan to cover.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at the handle @booktalkforbooktalk. Before you say goodbye, there's some cool-ass merch that we have for Winter Book Club.
Stay tuned.
Bye. Perfect.
Yay.
I'm going to reapply.
Ready? Oh, you do your thing?
I am ready. Today we are wearing Teddy 2.0.
I'm very familiar with Teddy.
By MAC.
What am I wearing today? Where did I put mine? Oh, here we go. I'm wearing KVD Cobra Lily.
Is that an older one?
I think so.
Yeah, I know. I bought a KVD recently, and the formula is different.
That's a
All
shame.
my super old KVD stuff is better.
This is probably at least a year to 18 months old.
Yeah, that's about right. We start becoming internet like lip gloss
Beauty
influencers. All
I
right.
go, see, read the label.
It's not coming.
I tried. I tried.
Our beauty influencer days are numbered.
Yeah. Basically 0.
Let's stick to books.
Yeah.